Hello and welcome to High Vibe Astrology. This is Jennifer. I'm back with a video to discuss the energies of Saturn and Sedna. And I'm recording this on the day that Saturn stations direct at 0 degrees of Pisces, and it is making an exact square to Sedna at 0 degrees of Gemini. We're going to be feeling the effects of this square for a few months, basically until the first week in February. I would say it's going to be within range of this square until it returns to the 7 degree, 12-minute mark when it first went retrograde. So it's been in this square, and we will feel this square until Saturn moves past that 7 degree and it's out of its shadow. Anyway, it's important to look at the commonalities that are shared between these two planets and also the contrast. And in general, Saturn represents earth and earthly and material gains or material tradition and establishing ourselves in the world. Sedna, on the other hand, is very cosmic. It has an ancient quality to it, but also a very futuristic quality. And what I find interesting is that Sedna, I'm feeling more and more, and I will probably do another video on the energies of this death and rebirth process. I'm feeling more and more that Sedna could be considered as the higher octave of Pluto. I've already assigned Sedna as the third symbol of Scorpio, the eagle. And we have a new moon in Scorpio coming up on the 13th, so anyway, I may do a video for that because Pluto and Sedna are in a trine. But this video, again, is about Saturn and Sedna being in this square. One of the things I wanted to say about Sedna is that as the planet with the longest orbit to date that our astronomers have found, an orbit of 11,500 years, and as a planet that is far beyond our solar system, on the outer edges even of the Kuiper Belt objects, Sedna was given her own category as a sednoid. So she is in a category all by herself. She breaks tradition in so many ways. This planet does represent deep, frigid conditions. That's why she was named for the immortal Arctic sea woman. But her return to our solar system, in my view, feels like energy that we are resurrecting from out of the cold. We are coming out of the cold in some very monumental way. Sedna's energies pertain to the entire Earth, civilization of humanity. She's reminding us that we have a responsibility to this planet, but we also have a responsibility as citizens of the cosmos. But there is definitely a profound message of coming out from the cold, a rebirth in some way. And this is important to keep in mind as we, experience this square. And just to remind you, if you haven't heard me say it before, squares bring up tension, inner conflict. It's where we feel at war within ourselves, and we can see how this is profoundly being reflected in our world, in all the strife and the tension and the warring. The inner conflicts we feel are reflected in our outer world. It doesn't mean that any one individual is responsible for that. It means that as a civilization, we have to come to terms with the collective shadow that has become such a monster. But when each one of us does the individual work, we are benefiting all of society. We are benefiting all of our civilization and our human family. When we don't do the work of Sedna, we are cheating the world of the creativity that wants to come in from out of the cold, the inner child that wants to heal, the emotional expressions that have been repressed, suppressed, or conditioned by certain worldly structures that Saturn represents. And this is the conversation taking place right now. This is the journey each one of us is on. And at the second part of this video is themes for each one of the signs, Aries through Pisces. And rather than me creating affirmations for each one, I have provided you with the frequencies of Saturn-Sedna plus the ruling planet of your sign. And I am merely presenting them to you, and you'll be able to see and comprehend the different themes for Saturn in the house and Sedna in the house for each one of your signs, and then create your own affirmation. Because this is really the work of Sedna. It's not up to me. I'm not a predictive astrologer, and I don't want to be. I want to present you with general themes, the consciousness of these planetary energies. And we have to remember, too, that planets are consciousness, and as such, they are subject to evolving just as we are. So we need to evolve and grow as the planets introduce their energies to us. But remember that it's a two-way street. As above, so below, as within, so without. The evolving that we do and take ownership of in our own lives actually benefits the planets, the world at large. So the more that we evolve, the more that we take in higher consciousness and work with that energy, we are benefiting the entirety of creation rather than it reaching a finite border represented by Saturn's rings. We are dissolving those boundaries and borders, and we are allowing the work that we do to reverberate in the rest of creation. So let's take a look at some of these contrasts and common themes. We associate Saturn in general with time, the taskmaster, the one who brings outer authorities or outer tradition, rules, and boundaries, rules and regulations we have to live by. Where Sedna is concerned, she is timeless. She is reminding us that we are creators. She created life in the sea and on land, and is reminding us that we can tap into our own creativity. Sedna breaks protocol insofar as she was given she's in a category all by herself, a sednoid. She was the first planet to be named outside Greco-Roman tradition, so she breaks with former traditions and paradigms. In that respect, she is limitless because she is the new frontier of space. Saturn represents the outer authority, represented by the rings that, as I said, bear down upon us until we claim our own inner authority. So in that respect, there is some commonality and some contrast where these two planets are concerned, because Sedna is definitely teaching us about our own inner authority. Saturn represents visible structures. Sedna represents that invisible spiritual connection we all have and feel. And by the same token, Saturn represents society's structures, whereas Sedna represents that spiritual matrix, the invisible matrix or network that connects all of life. Saturn, in that visibility, represents the reality as we see it, reality as it appears to be. Sedna, on the other hand, is engaging us to create a new reality for ourselves. Saturn has to do with ownership, taking possession of things in the visible world. Sedna is reminding us that we are stewards and that we can never truly possess God's creations. Saturn represents patriarchal perspectives, whereas Sedna is representing a matriarchal mindset. She's the mother of all life, life on land and sea. Saturn represents what is already established, governments, institutions, corporations, etc. Sedna reminds us that we ourselves are creators and that this creation is always ongoing. It is not stagnant. It is not finite. Saturn requires of us to do work in the outer world, whereas Sedna is asking us to do the inner work, to cultivate our own intuition. Saturn rewards us when we are practical and do that type of work in the outer world, whereas Sedna rewards us when we are doing the inner work and then returning that through our service work in some way. Saturn relates more to fears of scarcity, not having enough of material goods and resources. Sedna includes that type of fear of scarcity, but it has more to do with fear of the unknown, fear of the void, the mysteries, the infinite or infinite mysteries. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the myths and the legends of each one of these planets. Saturn is the god associated with the Greek Chronos and chronology, the god of time. Saturn, in one myth, devours his children because he doesn't want them taking his reign of power. He doesn't want them taking over the throne. And so he eats his children. He castrates his father, Uranus, and so is associated with restricting, severing, or cutting off life force energy, cutting off creativity. Sedna, on the other hand, actually created life through her own dismemberment. When her father cut off her fingers and digits and she drowned in the Arctic Sea, her dismemberment resulted in the infinite life of the seas and on land. What she requires from her creations and what she requires from the community who abandoned her and who are subject to her withholding or providing of abundance, what she requires is that they confess their wrongdoing, confess when they have transgressed against life, her creations, and have not held all life sacred. Saturn comes from the Greco-Roman tradition where the gods and goddesses no longer have any relevance to our present-day life. But on the other hand, Sedna is representing the living legend of the Inuit culture, the Inuit community, who, at least through their art and their present-day culture, still hold reverence for Sedna. So I find this very powerful and very relevant to us because Sedna is not a goddess as in the Greco-Roman tradition. She was born a human, a daughter in an Inuit clan who through her shamanic death became immortal. And it's like her message is reminding us that we as mortal humans, as we cultivate our inner spirituality and the inner connection to the source of all life, we are recalling, remembering, reestablishing our own immortal roots. And this is something that the false matrix has for centuries had its way in creating a narrative to divorce us from who we truly are, to separate and sever, to use Saturn's words, separate, cut off, and sever us from our own creative abilities, our own nature and primordial essence, from the source of all life. There is no place, nowhere in nature, within us or outside of us, where the source of all life, the infinite creator, does not take root. And when we come back to that, when we restore that connection, we are ascending. It's like the deeper we go into this ancient past and our ancient origins, the greater our ability to ascend and to also establish that frequency that is made available to all of life around us. This is such an important lesson to get, especially as we move through these next few months while these two planets are squaring up and having this conversation that is creating this internal tension in our lives. So Saturn has to do with past history And also, the past is somehow defining our future, or that we have to create a future based upon the past. And this is simply not true. That's part of the false matrix. Sedna is reminding us that our future is unfolding on a moment-to-moment basis. And when we tap into our creative energy and our spiritual origin on a moment-to-moment basis and take cues from spiritual guidance, our future is unfolding moment by moment and is subject to ongoing change. So our future is not set in stone. There is no finality to our future. And I think it's so important that, especially as we look at what's happening in our world, it's really important that we get the message from Sedna that we are not subject to experience again the cataclysms ending our civilization. The main message of Sedna in her connection to water and the water element, water is a superconductor of vibration, energy, and consciousness. So when we take our power back and we become more masterful in conducting our own emotions, that in turn becomes a superconductor of positive energy that reverberates into our world. We have so much more power than we realize as individuals through our emotions. And instead of us blocking off, cutting off, repressing or suppressing the emotions that come up and our feeling nature, we need to allow ourselves to feel so that we can heal, to allow ourselves to modulate to a higher frequency the emotions of fear, depression, scarcity, feeling demoralized and feeling powerless, to modulate those emotions into something far more powerful, and to take our cues from spirit, from our own feeling nature, from our compassion, from our intuition, and allow that to guide us as we move through life, but to always be looking to see how we can change a lower vibration of energy and emotion to a higher one. That's how we change our world. It's not by obeying the current structure that we've endured. And this is, something else really that Saturn and Sedna have in common. It's staying power, patience, endurance, and perseverance. But Sedna is encouraging us to recreate rather than create the same old, or live with an old structure that no longer serves who we are becoming as we ascend and as we transcend this ancient monstrosity of our collective shadow. So the next section will be each sign's themes, Aries through Pisces. I encourage you to create your own affirmation as you listen to the frequencies. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to being with you again in the next video.